Welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast, your weekly dose of knife news and information about knives and knife collecting. Here's your host, Bob the Knife Junkie DeMarco.
Welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast. I'm Bob DeMarco. On this edition of the show, I'm speaking with James Williams, luminary of the knife design and martial arts world. James spent many years serving in the U.S. Army and in the deep study of fighting at close range. He's codified his own system of armed and unarmed close quarters combat and has taught that system to military special operators of all ilk. I first met James in the Sheraton Hotel lobby during the Blade Show 2022, and we had our first conversation on this show later that year. I'm excited to have him back on the show for an examination of the intersection of real-world martial arts, escalation of force, and the use and design of fighting knives. We'll dive deep into those heady waters with Mr. Williams, but first, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And if you'd like to help support the show, you can do so by joining us on Patreon or joining us right down here below on YouTube as a Gentleman Junkie. Quickest way to do that is to go to TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon or scan the QR code right here on your screen. Again, that's TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon.
Adventure Delivered, your monthly subscription for hand-picked outdoor, survival, EDC, and other cool gear from our expert team of outdoor professionals. TheKnifeJunkie.com/BattleBox.
James, welcome back to the Knife Junkie podcast, sir. It's great to see you.
Nice to see you again as well, Bob.
Well, to those who maybe didn't see the first episode, let's just dive a little bit into your past, get a little context for the conversation we're going to have. You served in the U.S. Army. I know that.
Yeah, I was in the Army from 66 to 69. I grew up, I was born in the 40s. As my Irish friend would say, the 40s. I grew up going to Catholic school with the Irish, so I had to start fighting at an early age, whether I liked it or not. And I was actually a small kid growing up, and I couldn't see, and I didn't know that till second grade. I literally couldn't see your eyes from 4 feet away. I was legally blind without glasses and didn't know it till second grade. So thick glasses, not a big kid, new kid school a lot because we moved a lot. So, in those days, fighting at school was a common thing. On the way to school, on the way back from school. I didn't like it very much, and I wasn't that good at it in the beginning. But when I look back, there was a code, and I think the value of that when I see so many, even guys going in the military now that have never actually been to fight, and I'm just talking like a schoolyard fight, not so it's kind of interesting, but so that kind of gave me a desire to be better at learning how to do that, right? And so I've spent most of my entire life at different levels of different things, doing stuff like that, and not always under controlled circumstances, shall we say. And I was really fortunate at one point to meet Don Angier Sensei and to have a look into the old Kodi, the old systems, right? So I wrestled a bit in high school and college. I coached wrestling. I boxed, I kickboxed. I was successful. Somehow they found people I could beat in the 70s. So I was a successful kickboxer with a really amazing teacher, Frank Scalera Jr., who is the best martial artist nobody's ever heard of. And he brought boxing and boxing movement in from Bobo Olson. So we trained at boxing with former middleweight champ Bobo Olson. Oriental martial arts, 64, 65. I got a motorcycle so I could drive across town and do Shorin Ryu Okinawa. So I've studied several karate systems, Tongsudo, Taekwondo, Shorin Ryu, Filipino systems, Chinese systems, Russian, stuff from all over. I've always been very, very interested in continuing to expand and see what actually people did, how and why. been quite involved with teaching military special operations and not just ours. And having other experiences plus working with them and realizing the difference between engagement and reciprocity and art.
Hmm.
So almost everything we call martial arts now involve engagement or reciprocity, and almost all of them are based on are sport based of some kind. They may be violent sports, right? The problem when you have lethality is engagement or reciprocity is, yeah, there's the risk factor really climbs. Aiuchi mutual killing in ancient Japan was common, because you got two people standing 6, 7, 8 feet apart with 30 inches of steel, and even though sword's catastrophic, it doesn't necessarily stop the other person in the moment,
Mhm.
right? And knives especially, a lot of times it just feels like a bumper. I mean, you don't even know until afterwards, what's going on. And even shooting people. And ask anybody that was in '93 in the Battle of the Black Sea in Somalia, um, Black Hawk Down, the movie and the book. You know, they were using green tip. Bang, pop, 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 right, and people shooting back, and you're like hitting them because it's just penetrating through, right? Those guys have changed. They're using different ammo. That was a call from people in logistics. We have a lot of this because the Russians didn't have come forward with the app. So here's a whole bunch of ammo. Problem is that ammo is not designed for what we're doing and it didn't work very well. But anyway, so so looking into systems that were designed not to have engagement and reciprocity, um, started uh, right around 1980. I'd done stuff with Aikido, but I wouldn't consider that a martial art.
Okay.
Um, Go ahead.
But before we continue, I because
Yep.
I want to hear about this engagement reciprocity
Yes.
concept. But you mentioned a whole bunch of different martial arts, and I know a lot of us know you from your knife design. We may assume your various designs from knives. We may assume that you're very heavily steeped in the Japanese fighting systems. But you mentioned all these different fighting systems. You mentioned Russian, Filipino, Chinese. Um, what is the through line? We all have the same human body. What's the through line between all those
So,
martial arts?
so the thing that makes the biggest difference is the operating system. And where I found that, first time that I found that was in Yanagi with Angier Sensei, who inherited that from Yoshida Sensei, the son of Yoshida Kotaro, Yoshida Kotaro is well known in Japan. Yoshida Kenji came over here just before the Second World War and then was interned in a camp um, through the war, Camp Topaz. And then he got out just as things were turning in the war, but he had to go to the East Coast. And that's where Angier Sensei met him. Um, and so that was my first look into a different a whole different strategy of engagement, because everything else had been engagement and reciprocity, blocks and all kinds of stuff. Um, Although I have to say, the Filipino system, Dos Pares under Oman Cañete, was really slick, much, much, much different. I trained with Remy Priestess personally, but that kind of stuff back and forth, that's not what Oman Cañete did. And I guess I can tell that story. Everybody's dead. Um, so Frank was over there, late 70s. He actually had a house in the Philippines. And so they were out in the bush, out in the jungle, and they were having this whole little competition going on. And old man Canetti was kicking everybody's ass. And so Frank's talking to Rem and he says, "Hey, you need to go fight this guy." Remy's like, didn't want to do it. So Frank said, "I'll go fight him." This was typical of Frank, right? He did it with Bobo Olson, got in the ring with Bobo, and found out I don't know how to box. I'm an 6 degree in dunks, so I don't know how to box. Anyway, and so, oh man, Canetti kicked his ass. And so Frank came back and said, you know, he's my teacher now. You wouldn't even fight him. And so we changed what we were doing with our niece into the Dos Pares, and that was way slicker. Not the clanging, bashing, lot more sophisticated movement that made a lot more sense in the moment if you have an edge weapon. And so that was kind of a little look, but I wasn't ready for it psychologically at the time. I actually went by Angier Sensei's dojo in 1969 because I had a Cuban girlfriend that just escaped Castro, actually. And she lived out in a part of LA that was close to where he had the dojo. I remember driving by and saying, Ancient Samurai Martial Arts. I didn't see that again until 1980, right? So, but it took me a while to, realize that there were some other things out there. I came back and got involved with Aikido from a gentleman I'd known before, who was a Marine Pacific campaign, badly wounded in Guadalcanal. Also was a Marine amateur boxing champion. Um, and I just realized they didn't have anything that could even do anything against someone like me. What are we going to do with something else, right? I'd had way too much experience at that point in time. And so
You're talking about Aikido had nothing.
yeah, there was just nothing there in the process. And they kept talking about this, but it wasn't something that they could make work,
Okay.
right? Not on someone like me. Now at that point, I wrestled, coached wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, different styles of karate, Filipino arts, stuff that happened in other things that were not organized, shall we say. And so, and I'm not a small person. And so BJ one day just got frustrated with me and he pointed to this guy that used to work out in the back of the dojo. It was a cafeteria at the University of California, San Diego. And so I started training with him, and he was a student of Angier Sensei, one of his instructors. And I realized, oh, this is the stuff they actually used for war. It was really different, right? And so I started on that path. Still did other things. I remember I heard Mitch Yamashita. Mitch is probably dead too. Haven't been in contact with him a long time. Heard about the Gracies. Um, Let my brother-in-law know. We met wrestling in college. we got in a fight on the mat. He headbutted me. He said I headbutted him first, but it's not true. And got suspended for a week and became best friends. And later on, I married his little sister, right? But I said, hey, these guys are doing this, so why don't you go check it out, right? So, after a few months, I said, so what's the difference? He said, well, you got to come up, right? So I drove up there after one of Angier's classes and rolled around with Rorion and was like, oh, this is really different, okay? And so I started going up to the Gracies. I'd go up and train with Yanagi with Angier Sensei, and then I'd go to the Gracies afterwards. And my brother-in-law ended up becoming one of the Dirty Dozen, the first of the black belts, right? I think he's a fourth or fifth degree. He was fourth or fifth degree a long time ago. And had my boys do that, which is a lot of fun. So I'm just always, if there's something new to learn, I want to see what's the value in it, right? And grappling is really valuable. It's just not an efficient way to solve problems, especially when you get in the big world. Right?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, so say what we call, everybody thinks jujitsu now, they think Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is the newaza and katamewaza of jiu-jitsu, the ground grappling techniques from jiu-jitsu styles. It's more the ground grappling part of modern judo.
Okay.
Because you've taken out all the other things that are involved in all that. Because Kenjutsu is the omote, right? And if Kenjutsu is the omote, then Jujitsu is the ura. So a lot of those things happened when you had swords in the moment. You cut close, you get subas locked together or something, and you had to do something, but it couldn't be, grabbing somebody rolling around, when they're carrying multiple other tools, you've got multiple other opponents, right? That doesn't mean it doesn't have value.
So you're avoiding going to the ground. You got your swords locked up. You can't just roll the drop to the
ground. So all kinds of little strikes, all kinds of little throwing, all kinds of little things made up that part, right? And so you take all of that stuff out, even some of the reverse hand techniques, like from Aikido Jiu-Jitsu and stuff like that. I remember catching hoisting a couple of things. Oh no, you can't do that. Okay. I just wanted to see if it worked, right? But that doesn't mean it doesn't have value, because the only way you can actually get a lot of time and get used to people and relaxing and seeing things is if there's not a lot of consequence. It's just that now people start thinking that that's something to be used. I mean, it's even taught at some of the special operations places here, like and it's not how to solve problems there. So the reason I spent time going out there was because there was people out there that realized that this is not a solution for us in the environments that we're in. So those words, the Japanese are really, they're the Germans. I always say they're Germans of the Oriental race. Their trains are so much on time. If your train's 45 seconds early, don't get on it. It's not your train. I know. I was 2 stops when I realized this isn't my train, right? Had to go back. But their language are not as specific with their language, where a German-based English is, we're very precise, much more precise. So Budo, Bujutsu, they kind of brush terms back and forth quite a bit. So, modern jujitsu is a do art, basically.
Okay.
You know,
Do meaning art, not the combative.
yeah, it doesn't mean war in that sense, way, right? Budo versus Bujutsu, but they blurred a lot themselves. So I'm not Chris. I'm sure that was called jujitsu at the time. But it's just that you've taken out all kinds of stuff and the operating system has changed enormously as well, because you have a point system and you have time. So even the Gracies in the early days, I mean, those things might take 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? You went until somebody got a submission. Otherwise, it's like, what's the big deal?
So more of a chess match than a death match.
In that way, for that kind of stuff, right? And Hickson, when you fight, you usually have a couple of guys with them, so you keep people away. Well, you can't always do that. And if they have tools, that changes things a lot. I mean, there's so many factors that come involved in that. And so, Mars is, I always say, Mars is the god of war. War's about killing people and breaking shit. It's done with tools. Art's the ability to do it with your opponent without having them do it to you. So going back and forth, like a firefight, there's no art. There might be skill, right? So some of the guys I worked with, the art thing, when they're just hunting down, and probably 1-to-1, that small group of men killed way more people than any of the presence patrols or any of that kind of stuff did. Most of the time, those guys get in a firefight, CAS or indirect fire come in, and close air support and really help with the situation, shall we say. Those guys hunted, they go in, they hunt. That's all they do for the time they're there. And they go from, this is not, yeah, they'll go they'll hit a target, and then they'll get the info and hit another one, and then another one, maybe 2 or 3 more in a night. So they're not working with Indig. Nobody knows ahead of time what they're doing, and so they're catching everybody by surprise, right? I mean, your job is to take out specific people. It's not to get in fights.
Right.
So when you're looking at the highest level of samurai, very much like that, except we'll see each other, right? So what you're doing is you're managing yourself in a completely different way than like the way I used to win fights a long time ago with busted hands and $10,600 worth of teeth a couple of years ago. I didn't put them all back, but I had to put enough of them back so I could chew properly. I can't do, unfortunately, I can't do anything about the brain cells. So, but so yeah, it's not leverage based, not strength based. And people say, well, where do you get the energy and stuff, like striking? And Mikhail Robko was very good at this, by the way. Sistema was very interesting for me.
Sistema, Russian system.
Yeah, Sistema. And I see a lot of people saying, oh, they blow it up. But, I've been under that fist. I've got pictures of me all bruised up and everything. I went to Russia, 9/11, we were supposed to be there that month, but we had to be a couple more months. Misha couldn't get a thing. So I'd seen a thing at Toby Threadgill's in Texas. They had this video of this Russian guy, he's doing stuff, and they're kind of making fun of it. And I'm like looking at it and I'm thinking, where'd the Russians get this? And after about 10 minutes, I go, no, you guys, this guy's good. And I'm thinking they're really good. So I thought, I got to find these guys. So I ended up going up to Toronto and then going to Russia a couple of times, and training with them. And and it's just a very, very different operating system. It's really odd to me that you would get, the only thing that makes it make sense is they're both sword-based arts.
Really?
Yes,
Systema?
Sistema is a sword-based art. I've got
Really?
pictures of me, with Savers, Misha and I down in his basement, right?
So let me tell you my impression just from the videos I've seen
Sure.
online. It looks like magic, and to me, I wanted to get back to this engagement and reciprocity
Right.
concept. To me, that looks like the ultimate expression of that. But I also know that it's used and that people like yourself, like actually have learned to functionalize it and use it. Um, Tell me, let's go to the engagement and reciprocity
Okay.
concept and break it out into
Okay.
different arts.
So there's a fundamental concept in high-level kenjutsu called otonashi no kachi. Okay. And that means silent victory, no touching of blades. Okay. So here we are. You've got some knife background. Here we are. And my job is to cut you down without touching your blade or having you touch mine. Or if we do, it's in the same movement called kobuitai. No separation between attack and defense.
Okay.
Okay. So how are you going to do that? Right. I mean, I was good at lots of, all this. But this is a completely different thing. I can't use that operating system. So how can I hide movement? Right? Because the origin of movement and stuff, including origin in your mind, especially where your mind is, can be perceptible to people. Right? Well, how do you hide that? Okay, well, first, you have to start turning all that flexing and all that stuff off. And that is a process. Right? And so I've sometimes played with actually, one of my students brought this in my dojo in California, which is 2 blocks from the beach, right? And I'm a surfer. And it was from a movie. I can't remember the name of it, but the guy was, he was wanted to go surfing. And so he gets this guy who called himself Kunu, right? And he's like, don't do anything. Don't do it. Don't try to surf, right? And that's a whole little monologue. And so they brought it into the dojo one time because I'm constantly telling them, no, you can't do that. You can't flex a muscle to do this. If I'm raising this up, I can't use these muscles in the process, right? And you literally get to where, like, if I'm holding my hand out like this, right? And you can feel if I'm using my anterior delt and trying to do that. If I don't, instead of the pressure going here to here into your base, it tips you, right? And it's like a push versus a reach. If I push and do all that kind of stuff, if I flex, right, it goes to your feet. And so now we have a contest. If I reach, it doesn't go to your feet and you can't access them and you're moved, right? And why was that important? When I cut you with the sword, I need to, called kuzushi, I need to gather, unbalance you with the cut. Because if I don't, and we're both moving, well, what are the chances of me getting stabbed and cut? And I mean, those swords do a lot of damage fast. I mean, and they didn't have life, light, and blood. You're like, you might bleed out slower than the other guy, but the bottom line is, so how do you do that? Okay, so that became a whole different study for them. And it's like punching. When people see Misha hardly move, I can tell you, and I've got pictures the first day in Russia, I'm bruised all up, right? And it's like, because you're using a different operating system. So at this point, when I'm teaching students, you've got your fear-based, flighting-based operating system. Okay. Then you've got what I call a faith-based operating system. Okay. So we're actually all living by faith every moment of every day. Even you, Dick Dawkins, your logic is there's a thing he came on and he was called himself a cultural Christian. He was lamenting what was happening and everything. And I'm like, I did a podcast out of Austria, and I'm saying your logic here is as bad as your science, right? Anyway, so we have gravity, right? And we have mass. And any movement then is going to mean there's energy there. I don't have to flex to make it happen. On the contrary, if I flex, I can take away. So like in my garage, I have my workout stuff in my garage. I've got a 100-pound kettlebell. I can actually let it go and bend down, touch the floor faster than it can get there. But when that hits the ground, 100 pounds like that, you're thinking, I don't drop it on my concrete in my garage. I think it'll crack the concrete.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what if you could take and use velocity with and use that mass instead of all the flexing, pushing? Bubble used to kick us in the calf, say that's your punching muscle. And you could just let that go like that, and it all transferred all that energy. Right. Well, that's a huge amount of energy. Right. And so once you feel that, you realize that, man, how do you get to be able to do that? Well, you have to quit doing it in the sense of I've got to do it. And it's the same with the cut. It's the same with all of that stuff. Right. And so and the more I process all through this, how it works and everything, when I'm teaching, Kuroda Sensei told me this years and years ago. He would say, Sensei, his grandfather, he said, grandfather got faster as he got older. Okay. Well, I'm taking less time now that I'm older, and I'm closing in on 80 here, right? I'm not a young person.
Wow.
So, but because I'm not using all of the reflexes and stuff to do that, it's a different connection. And when you actually tie everything into your center of movement, right? You actually tie everything into your center of movement. And all you have to do is move that, like maybe hip back 3 inches, hip back 3 inches, and this takes place, right? Well, there's none of me doing any of that. There's no little things happening. It's like it's all connected. As this rotates, I don't rotate it separately. So you spend all this time taking away things that actually got in the way. Boy, is that a metaphor for life or what?
Yeah.
Psychologically,
Everything.
emotionally, spiritually, right?
Yeah.
I keep looking at that guy in the mirror. He don't listen well, though. It's like, you're the problem, right?
I mean, that's the same in all sort of creative pursuits, just eliminating the stuff that's not
getting
necessary.
yourself out of the way, all of your stuff, right? All your fear-based stuff, because the fight flight is a fear-based mechanism, right? And now, can you use it? Sure. Is it best? No. The more you use it, especially in some situations, the more feedback you get as well. The more PTSD you're going to end up with some stuff as well.
So is this where the faith part comes in? You mentioned faith-based operating.
So we'll start with just the physical faith, right? I mean, if I pick up a knife, imagine me just having a knife laying around, and I let go of it. Do you believe it's going to drop, or do you know it's going to drop?
Yeah, I know it's going to drop.
Okay. And you even know why. Because of gravity. But we don't even know what gravity is. We don't know what gravity is. Science doesn't know what gravity is. We know it does, but we know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, oxygen transfer. How often do you wake up in the middle of the night going, what if oxygen transfer didn't take place?
Yeah.
We don't even think about it.
Right.
But, this special little place that has these things like this, that we can, all of this, it's like we don't even think about it, but yet that's how it is. So this is like that, realizing, one, I weigh 200 and some pounds. And, if I could just release half of that with a little bit of velocity, certainly I can have more velocity than drop my 100-pound kettlebell, and I can let it transfer, right? Well, that's a whole nother thing altogether. And the feeling of the people, I'll reach out and pop and I'll move somebody back feet, right? And it's like, whoop, but it doesn't look like much. And it's not Bruce Lee's. He was pushing with his calf. He was an athlete. He didn't understand this stuff. Okay. It's a completely different thing. I can do it with one leg up in the air. It doesn't matter, because you're allowing all of that to happen instead of trying to make it happen. Okay. And so, and you can do that. I mean, and this isn't a really good analogy, but if you're shooting, if you're trying to make that gun work, it's not going to be very accurate. You got to let it work. You got to ride the recoil, even if it's really rapid. You've got to manage the trigger and the trigger reset, right? All of these things. And the calmer you can be, right, the better you are. And so, and the no thinking part, we talked about that. It's not that there isn't stuff going through your mind, but it's not connected to what you're doing. As my warrior son would say, if you think in that environment, you're dead. And another one of my friends, who is a sergeant major out of them, he's getting out as well, got a Distinguished Service Cross. Probably should have been a Medal of Honor, and it may even, if he gets out, we'll see anyway. But he's coming through a gate in Afghanistan years ago, right? And so those big mud-walled, I don't know if you've ever seen them, big mud-walled compounds. So we call those things fatal funnels because you're only coming through one place, right?
Right.
So anybody on the inside knows where you got to come through. So he breaches that, and there's 3 guys, AKs up on him. In 3 seconds, but 23 rounds on him. All not no automatic fire. 8, slight hesitation, women and children 7. Okay. Just like that. And it's like what was going on in his brain, he's a close friend. What's going on in his brain takes way longer to tell than what he actually did. And he can tell you where every bullet hit in the process.
Wow.
Right. And so you get into that state, and these are special people. So when I was out there for a Distinguished Service Cross years ago, they'd had 50 people make it through. They call it the long walk, right? That's the physical selection. I think they took 3 after the psych.
Oh, this Delta Force or
something like that. I'm not going to use that word myself.
Sure. I've heard of this long walk though.
Yeah. So a lot of that information's out there, but I've got an NDA with them and everything up. So, but you guys know what I'm talking. So anyway, I mean, and then you've got 6 months of OTC, operator training course, and you can still fail that. So when you think they never have the full group of people, which isn't very many, right? So we're talking about very, very, very special people. But we were at the range actually a couple of years ago, and he said, I think I've shot 1 million rounds. Wow. Well, practice, right? In the process.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so the point of, in the moment of this, I can't be thinking, but yet by not thinking, like not having tension, I become so much more aware of all the things that I can't be when my brain's going.
Yeah.
So the calmer I get it, and so the Japanese have a couple of words for that. One is mizu no kokoro. Mizu means water, kokoro. So kokoro is like spirit, but it's like still water, like a mirror. Right? The other one is mushin, no mind, no thinking conscious mind. At that point, and like you've been hunting, and I'm not talking about tree stands, that's harvesting, as I tell my grandson. Right?
Yeah.
Hunting is when you're on the ground with the animals, right?
Right.
And especially depending on where you are, if it's dangerous places. I mean, you've got to be like, you get quiet, open your mouth a little so it makes your hearing better. You've got to get quiet. And when you move, you got to be really careful because then that movement's going to let them know what's happening, right? So the quieter I am, the more aware I become. Well, now you're in situations and you want that same type of, because you're going to tell me all kinds of things if I can hear. If I'm going through my own stuff, I can't hear, right? I've got too much background noise going on that I can't hear or see. Kuroda Sensei was really good at this. And so when I'm going with my senior students, whether I'm the Uchidachi or the Shidachi, so the Shidachi is doing the Ryuha's technique, and the Uchidachi is providing an attack. And usually it's a set attack, but later on you can change it. But in the beginning, well, I went on either side. Doesn't matter, right? And many times I'll move before they move, but they've already made the decision, so they're caught, right? Because as you get more and more, you don't realize what you're telling people, right? And so as you get clearer and clearer, and you're doing less and less in every way, shape, and form, right? Well, you know when to move, right? And so how I actually got involved with Kuroda Sensei, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, this concept is something I'm instilling in my 15-year-old daughter, who I'm teaching how to drive. And when you're driving on the highway, you can sense micro movements from other cars. It's like, what they're going to do before they do it.
I'm just going through that with grandchildren.
Okay.
So grandson, now he's out. He's got 17 now. He's got his own, right? But we're coming back. I was teaching in Asheboro. And so we're coming up. I said, "What's wrong with that car?" And I said, "Look at that." Okay. And so sure enough, we pull up, right? And he said, this is a lethal environment, right? Half these people are barely competent if they're paying attention.
Yeah. And they're
And
not.
then these days, a whole lot of them are not paying any attention at all. Some of them are this, some of it's going through their head. So you got to treat all of this. And so you have to read them, right? Like that family just got killed by the trucker coming through the stop sign.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a granddaughter coming up and I'm going to start teaching her pretty soon. Right. And so it's like stop signs and stoplights do not stop cars.
Yep.
Right. They're a suggestion. Right. So constantly looking before you even get to the intersection, right? Because you want to know what's the situation on the ground. It's like when people say, well, what would you do if somebody did this? I go, well, what's the context? Well, what do you mean? I said, well, is it day or night? Is it hot or cold? Is it wet or dry?
Are we in an elevator? Or
yeah, I mean, what? Because there is no answer like that, because context is everything. A great thing for your daughter, not easy to see, and you don't have to do, but the situation happened in Charlotte on the train.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, is that guy, should he have been out? Nope. You and I would have picked him up as soon as he walked on that train. Right. She did not take responsibility for any of it. She was in her own little world and completely right. And so does that make it right or anything? No, but the personal responsibility part, there's no would be, should be, could be world. If you're not paying attention, you're going to pay the price, whatever that happens to be. You're at the beach too long and you get sunburned,
And
right?
no
Whatever
doubt,
it happens to be.
No doubt she was breathing a sigh of relief living in the United States, getting away from the war in Ukraine. But that sigh of, but let me ask you this.
Sure.
So as I mentioned up front, you've taught to a lot of people these kind of fighting, different ways to approach close quarters combat. Some are very, very special, but I can't imagine all of them are. How do you, in a short time, they don't have a lot of time to learn this stuff.
So that
how do you instill this?
There's the dilemma. And so I start with things like you're managing three factors: distance and relationship and timing. Okay. So distance depends on what environment, what tools, but we're still managing those things, whether we're doing an entry, whatever it happens to be doing, right? And so when we're doing, and we talked about this last one, if a person's reaching, pushing, shoving, stabbing, or hitting, right, they're looking with one direction and they're coming off of the base of a triangle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're coming off this base of triangle, I release my left hip a little bit and reach up. I can pass you right by me. You're still moving, right? It's not a block, and I have an opportunity in there to do something, right? Whether it's a takedown, whether it's a strike, whether it's a stab, whatever it happens to be. Okay. And so what you start learning to do is, and I call it fluid geometry, but don't look it up. They'll talk about hydraulics. Well, people say, well, but this is changing. Well, yes, but I can perceive the change and I just release, and all I have to do is release my body here and it changes the relationship between. So I start with that, right? Because the person's going to give you opportunity if you'll just let them. So we need to be very kind and let them have their opportunity before we show them the error of their ways. And so, with swords, it's the same thing. We talked about this last year. You can't be banging and cracking them together. I mean, everybody tries their way. Western swordsmen have this type of way of trying to, forge and heat treat. Japanese had their particular way of forging and heat treating and doing stuff. But the bottom line is long, thin pieces of hard steel, chip, crack, and break. You start cracking them against each other and you're going to chip, crack, and break the sword. And you can read like Japanese stuff. You can read guys, there was a fight at the Teradaya, the Terra Inn, and one guy's sword broke and he was killed, right? It's a bad idea to be in a sword fight with a sword that's, looks good in the movies, doesn't work very well, right? Unless the script gets written out first. So you can't be doing that, but also the longer you take to solution and the more that happens, the more time and the more movement, the entropy starts climbing like nobody's business, right? If there's not much time and not much that you did, it's pretty easy to manage and predict an outcome. But the more that gets going, the less you can do that. Now, you get in situations where the situation is chaotic and you've got to just surf the waves of chaos and be able to pick those things out, which is what a surfer does, right? The ocean's out there. It's not chaotic anymore, usually by the time it gets there, depending. But you're just watching and reading that particular situation, given all the factors, and using that in the moment. And so you have to be able to not try to control everything, but flow through there in the process and be able to adapt and respond because you don't know. When I go to the range, I spend time, I'll shoot right-handed, like maybe I'm just doing plates for a while. So I'll go right-handed, right eye, then I'll switch and I'll go left-handed, left eye. Right hand, left hand, and then I'll switch back and forth. I'll take the left hand this way and the right hand this way, then maybe one-handed with the flashlight and stuff. So I can shoot so if I come up left eye or right eye, it automatically goes to that without me having to close my eyes. Now that took training, right? But a long time ago, God, it's been a long time now, quarter of a century or more. I'm getting old. Learning that, man, cornering right-handed on a left-handed corner is not a good idea. There's no way that you can do that as efficiently as if you switch. There's just no way. I mean, you give them an eyeball and a barrel, that's almost nothing. You give them, a third of your upper body and they can see you coming around before it happens. Right. And especially in situations where the walls won't stop the bullets. And that's a whole lot of situations.
Most situations.
My house, they won't stop the bullets, right? Now you get in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's places where a lot of those things will stop bullets, but our houses don't tend to stop bullets. Right. And so when I'm doing that, it's not only that, I don't want a big target. I don't want them to see anything until I've got everything on them, right? By the time they see me, I'm already on the trigger because it's a barrel and an eyeball, right? Or light barrel and eyeball. And so, what you're doing with all of this is you're the same with the sword. There's going to be a path of travel. I can perceive it. What's the timing of me perceiving it and making it so that he can't see that I'm not in the line for the cut, but he's in mind. Okay. And I think we did this a little bit last time. So you move a hand like this towards a person and you move a hand like this towards a person. Well, in the moment they can't see the difference. When you're moving from out here, okay, that's easily seen and that path of travel is easily blocked. If you move from back here, so I'm moving away from I'm literally flexing my rhomboids in the moment. So right now, when I'm sitting here, I'm flexing my rhomboids. I'm moving my scapula, left scapula, right scapula. I'm moving them up. The levator scapula, the muscle attached to the top. Okay. And you teach yourself how to do this. Did you ever read Dune?
No, my wife is a huge fan of the books, but
read Dune. I told you last time to read Gates of Fire. Did you end up reading it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you got to read Gates of Fire. Listen, at the building, I mean, Gates of Fire's had a huge impact on those guys. And Dune. So it's funny because at the football game the other day, one of the guys, he's a physical therapist, really fit guy, and he had tattoos on his arm. And I said, "Oh, that's Tengwar." And he goes, "Right." So Tengwar is the Elvish language, the Elvish writing script for Quenya and Sindarin, right? And he says, "Yeah, but it's a Bene Gesserit saying, right?" And so that comes from Dune.
Yeah.
And so I said, "So I teach the weirding way of fighting." He's like, "Okay." So I had him grab me, right? And I said, and strong guy, right? Really fit. So I had him grab me and I just turned my hand over and he can't prevent it. Now, if I tense and start flexing, he can stop me. Or we have a wrestling match, which I'm a good wrestler, but I get tired really fast. So if you could hang on for right, that doesn't work the same anymore. So and you get all kinds of these things where if I don't use any muscle, I literally feel like all this is empty and I can move, the person can't stop you. As soon as I tense even a little bit, now we have a fight. Now I've got to try to use strength and leverage. Okay. And it took time to realize how that worked, but that's what they're using with the sword. So the person will cut down and you go like that and their sword goes right past you and you cut them. And yet I never knock their sword away sideways at all. I'm literally letting them have what they want. And I'm taking the space that they left just as they left it. In the moment they left it, I've already taken that space. And so they'll be cutting like this and it'll go like, just like that. Okay. And so that is a fundamental part that you can start teaching fairly early. So I'll have the kids or the whoever I'm doing it with, right? Okay, the person's reaching to grab like this, and you just reach and you parallel what's happening. Don't push sideways. We're not even looking for contact. All you have to do is take this elbow's got to go through this space. If it can go through that space, if it can't go through that space, it'll miss you.
Is this different from intercepting fist or interception?
In that sense, yes.
Okay.
Because ultimately, I won't even touch you eventually.
Okay.
Okay. I won't even touch you because I'm managing the relationship more than I'm trying to block or deflect. Okay. So as I move, I also may not be where you think I am, but I can't be doing it by any movements that the eye can see. Right. But, Tacitus, Flavius Vegetus Renatus in his De Re Militari, in every battle, after all, the eye is fooled first. Okay. So fooling the eye, right? Then fooling the grasp, fooling any contact, right? And so I can get basics down with people, because if you've got a small knife, what I want is, if the person's coming in doing whatever, I want to come right through, and I want to go to places that matter. I want to just stab them or something, right? I want to go to places that matter in the moment, right? We all saw that stabbing in what was it? It wasn't Perth. It was in Queensland. Was it Melbourne? Anyway, in Australia, I can't remember now, but the two groups of guys going back and forth, and one of them had a knife, and they're going back and forth. Did you see that one?
I'm not sure if I know this one. I see a lot of stabbing videos.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so it's a bunch of guys, and one of them has a knife on one side and one on the other, and there's a pretty big guy here. And when first comes up, everybody backs off, but the one guy, he's taking this knife, and it's not real big, but it's big enough, and he's swinging at people, right? And he's aiming for a deadly spot. And if you can see it, if not, let me know, and I'll find it and email it to you, because I'm sure I have it. So they're going back and forth a little bit, and it's all this kind of stupid stuff, right? And so the second time they closed, the big guy came up like the first time, and everybody backed away because he's big.
Gets him right on the throat.
Yeah, hit him right here.
And it took him a second to realize it, and then he just drops.
Yeah. Well, it took him a few steps, and I call this the golden triangle, because the apex of the lung, the carotid artery, the jugular, the brachial plexus. I mean, it's all. You get a high return on your investment for the risk that you took.
All right, let me ask you this,
Sure.
just because we have about 10 minutes or a little bit more left here, but I want to get to the concept of escalation of force. We live in troubled times. We have a lot of conflict just kind of running rampant.
Yes.
What is a good way to think about how and when to escalate force with some random person on the street?
Okay, so first of all, mindset and training. So first of all, I leave the house with the highest level of force I can carry. So for me, every day I've got a Glock 43. I've got 16 rounds in that, a 15-round backup magazine. I've got a 4.5-inch Wings Blade Designer CRKT HC4 knife here. I've got one of these here in the other pocket. It's our new 4.5-inch. This is the operator one. It actually has a hook, because my warrior son would put this on his otanashi, so he could just draw it in one motion. Have a flipper version blackened as well, but this actually has Williams blade design on it. This is dark. There's nothing on it, just because some people need anonymity. But anyway, so I've got that. I've got 2 flashlights. I've got a Surefire Pro 2, that 1500 lumens, 35,000 candela, right? And then I've got another one, 400 lumen one that fits on my keychain. That's not very big. And so I've got a tourniquet in my pocket. I wear cargo pants most of the time. Got a tourniquet. That's just the stuff on me.
Yep.
Okay. And so that means I have tools, right? And I think having tools makes you more aware, right? Now my car, I've got all kinds. I've got much more medical stuff. I've got a whole lot more stuff. I've got a Ford Expedition. It's like it's set up also to do right, like hit a deer at 50 miles an hour and not hurt the car.
Right.
So well, because there's a lot of woods and a lot of deer around here. And so the first thing is the mindset before you leave the house. Am I prepared? Where am I going? When am I going there? Who am I going with? Right? 1-on-1 can be more than 2, or 1-on-1 can be less than 1.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've seen that, I think I told you it was actually, what was that guy's name? It was up in Hollywood, Fred Astaire's old house. And so there was a wealthy guy there, and he had a daughter, and he wanted me to come teach a class. I actually had to put him out of the class and make him be quiet because she was telling me some stuff that she needed to tell. And he was like, what? And I'm like, quiet. It's my class. Right. But she had a situation where she was at a party and she and a girlfriend called a cab. When the cab came, it wasn't the cab company. And so she said, this isn't our cab. And the girl goes, oh, it'll be fine. Right. So they get in, right. And she's not feeling comfortable. She says, I want to get off at your house. And the girl goes, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And so the girl gets out and the guy goes, yeah, you're coming home with me. And she's like freaking out. So she finally gets somebody on her phone. So he drops her off. He says, I know where you live. Right. And so, I'm talking to her, and she had a couple other instances. I said, darling, you need to understand that you don't have friends. These people aren't concerned about you. So that's the first thing. When you're out there with these people, she's uncomfortable and you're not saying, hey, I come off to my house, right? You don't have friends. I live in a completely different area. I live in such a great bubble, but it's another story. And so you need to understand, who am I going with? Where are we going? What's the backup plan? And so especially young women, right? And you see more and more of these guys are letting out. That young girl was just killed again in South Carolina, right?
Yeah.
University of South Carolina, and they're letting these people out over and over, right? This isn't a be nice to people thing. Those people are in prison for a reason, right? And so so you want to read all of that. Who are you with? Where are you going? You never walk past a dark hole. You clear it with your light or something. I've got a couple of videos on that up on YouTube, that when I was doing some TV stuff, right? And so, you always clear a black hole. You don't go by them. You don't walk up to them. You don't walk up to your house with a bunch of bushes. You look on. There was a woman in, I think it was Seattle, and guy was in the bushes and followed her into, and that happened there as well. And so you've got to think about all those things and have these tools on you, right? You have to have them on you. And ladies are the worst for that, right? And part of it is because it makes them afraid, and then they don't want to be prepared. And that's why, like, sign the pen, because you can't always carry knives, right? Pen actually for breaking contact, because personal defense is a breaking contact thing, right? This will actually work better than the knife because it hurts a whole lot more, right? It hurts a whole lot more. And, I did the key, the whole bit, because I've used them before. It's just that I bent one so bad I almost couldn't drive away. So I figured maybe I should design something that, anyway. But so you have your tools with you, right? You don't let people get close. You don't let them talk you into things, right? Including your friends. That might be the bigger thing. And so, and you just think about, when I leave my house, I'm in a different world, and you run DEF CON. Right? Say Sunday afternoon in your house, safe area, everything's great, DEF CON 4. And you work your way up. As soon as you get in your car, it's at least DEF CON 3. You get out of your car downtown someplace, especially at night, now you're in DEF CON 2 potentially, right? And then, then it's like, this is, now I'm getting ready. I'm starting to access tools or have them in my hands. Right. And with the ladies, it can't be stuck in their purse. I always ask, like, how do you guys find things in your purse like this?
Yeah, right.
Can't be that. Right. So, the Surefire stiletto, just the regular one's not that expensive. It's not plastic, but some type of thing. So it's enough that they could slip it inside their pants, because they don't always wear. I'm wearing stuff to carry what I want. Right. That women aren't going to do that. So you could have the flashlight. That's the most important thing. Besides this, having a tool like that first and foremost. Okay. So even on that train, if that guy would have stood up and she would have been watched, she could have hit him with the light and hit him with a pen or something. Right. Because even that lit train, that's 600 lumens. That's enough in the moment, right, to help. And so those things, and again, as you carry stuff, and it just automatically raises your DEF gun, your defense condition. You're more prepared,
Yeah.
right? Because you're recognizing yourself that when you go out, it's potentially dangerous. Another one, I pulled this video off of YouTube years and years ago. First time I was in Africa, I had lunch with this guy. He was a safari guide, and he gave me a book. I gave him one of my Hisatsu, which was interesting because I didn't know this story at the time. But in '99, he was taking some people up into the Buwimbi forest in Uganda to see mountain gorillas. And Interahamwe, the Hutu death squads from Rwanda, came through early in the morning, and they took all the English-speaking people and separated, and then took them up into the forest, right? And so it's a really well done documentary, and I use it as who lives, who dies, and why. Because the people that died actually made the decision themselves. And they had a couple. His was a couple, and they were this strong power couple from Seattle, I think, or Portland, and just loved, da 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 da. And you just watch them come apart, especially him as a man, not able to handle the stress of it in the process, the fear. And so things like that are really good. So I had one of my friends, he was actually a helicopter pilot. His wife was there, and she got halfway through. She went outside the dojo. This was in Encinitas when I had my dojo there. And I walked out. I said, "So what's the problem?" She said, "I just can't watch that stuff. After some stuff in college, I just can't watch it." And I go, "Okay." He said, "You've got kids, right?" I knew she did. I said, "So if you can't handle it, what's going to happen to them?" And so a few days later, Thursday class, he comes in, he goes, "What'd you do?" And I go, "What?" She said, "She's like dialed. She like checks everything first. She's like, yeah, because it's not about you anymore. Right? You're a mom. You want to get past that stuff. You're a dad, right?"
Yep.
All of a sudden the rules change. So just the personal responsibility part, and even thinking, hey, you could save your friends. They're going to do something stupid. It's like, yeah, let's not do that. Right? You can read about it in the paper in the morning when somebody else made that choice. It's not an easy thing, Dad. I know, I've been through it. I had boys though, so my thing was, that young lady's going to get home in the same condition she left the house.
Yeah.
If I heard from somebody's dad, you're in more trouble from me than you are from him. Right?
Yeah, having girls is they've got great heads on their shoulder. They have a mother who's very extremely security minded. This whole house is, but I can't say it doesn't worry me.
What does, and part of it is, again, making choices. So this is before Christopher, my oldest one, could drive. So we dropped him off in Lacoste at a party in the house we dropped him off in. The mom's like, we're really cool parents. Don't worry, we're really cool, and this and that, right? And I can see as we're driving home, my wife's stewing on a little bit. She reads people better than my CIA interrogators I've worked with, right? We walk in the front door. She goes, "We're going back." I'm like, "Nushka." So we drive all the way back, 2 blocks in the party. Here's Christopher walking with these 2 girls. So I slow down, like, "So what's up?" Well, these 2 girls had left the party, go down where there were older guys with drugs and alcohol.
Jeez.
And Christopher had gone down to bring him back, right? Now, my wife's like 5'2", 150, very athletic, but tiny, right? But she's got her brother's blood, right? He was one of the toughest guys, right? I told you, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, and said, "No, we're not going in the house. We'll just take him home, take the girls back, or take him home," right? But the ability to read stuff like that, or have the male that's going to be a man, right? And watch out for your daughter in the process.
Yeah.
And make sure that she gets home, that she gets home okay.
Yeah.
That's a big choice when you have daughters. Now I raised boys and I trained them. They had skills and they had a responsibility, and that responsibility was that young lady need to be taken care of when you're out on a date with her. That's your responsibility.
Yeah.
But it was just, so Christopher went down, got those 2 girls, and so I was very proud of him in the process.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've trained my girls out of as much as I can so far is people pleasing and trying not to offend people. We are not a house that worries much about offending people, which is
Right.
great. But a lot of people default to don't offend, be polite, and being polite is always important.
Yes.
But
yes.
it's different from being a pushover. And
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing, because I live in a place, and again, I live in a bubble here. The kids are great. Most of them are homeschooled, really capable, very polite, ma'am, sir, this, right, the whole bit. But they're also perceptive kids and read people, right? And so being polite is one thing, reading people and understanding is another.
yeah,
My wife, because her dad died in the middle of the night when she was 10, she was a latchkey kid out of the house at 15, in it, right? Because she could read people like nobody, I mean, literally CIA interrogator. She could read people like nobody's business. But, you want to gain that. That's one thing to be polite. It's another to know when, to do that. And so, yeah. And again, reading people say, oh, you're just judging. Judgment's different. Judgment's God's responsibility.
Discernment.
Yes, we're reading people. What's this person? That guy on that bus, on that train, right away, boom, something bad going on there. That
Yep.
guy it's seriously dangerous, right?
Yep.
Walking with one of my female students, one of my instructors in Germany, where she lives in Cologne, and just pointing out, group of young males, not even German, don't walk by there as a single female at night.
Yep.
People would say, oh, well, listen, Muslims are a problem, and they're a big problem with women. Huge problem, right? And so listen, you read the handwriting on the young males are a potential problem anywhere. Group of young males, right? You need to read that cross the street. Don't put yourself in those positions. The best way, don't put yourself in that position.
Absolutely.
Right.
Especially there in Cologne. It's a huge issue.
Yes.
James, we're up against our hour. I want to thank you
no problem.
for coming on. But for those of you who are patrons of this show, we're going to continue this conversation. I feel like this could go on for days and days. You're fascinating, and you're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome talking with you.
Thank you for having me. Good seeing you again. And I'll probably take a look through the comments if people have questions. I don't have as much time this way anymore, but I have a little bit more this way. So so I'll see if I can help out if people have questions that I can help with.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you carry multiple knives, then overthink which one to use when an actual cutting chore pops up? You're a knife junkie of the first order.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. James Williams, man alive. I love talking to this man. And sometimes at some points, I'm just barely holding on because I feel like a lot of this stuff has to be seen in person or demonstrated on you. Heaven forbid. But it was great talking with him. I strongly urge you to become a patron or a gentleman junkie and listen to the rest of this conversation and all the conversations we have here on this show. They keep going, and it's always a great listen. All right. For Jim working his magic behind the switcher, I'm Bob DeMarco saying until next time, don't take dull for an answer.
Thanks for listening to the Knife Junkie podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review at reviewthepodcast.com. For show notes for today's episode, additional resources, and to listen to past episodes, visit our website, TheKnifeJunkie.com. You can also watch our latest videos on YouTube at TheKnifeJunkie.com/YouTube.